I'm back with my fourth video. I think this will be the last video that I focus pretty much on the domestic violence aspect of it. It really hasn't helped me at all to be the victim and bring it up to the court. I'm the wrong gender. But I did at least want to go over this paperwork I have in front of me. And we'll start with this. The event happened, I reported it, and I got a temporary protection order against her. Set that down there. When that expired, reissuance of the same order. When that was about to expire, I petitioned for another order, and I did receive a third domestic violence no contact order. Total time for all of that was about 30 days or so, give or take. But when that expired and all that was over, as you already know, she got my son full-time, 100%. And there were two cases going on. She filed for divorce while she was under a protection order for the criminal charges of domestic violence. And she approached me several times before the criminal case went to hearing, begging me to recant my story to the police. I couldn't drop charges per se because charges are automatic by the state versus the perpetrator of domestic violence. But I could crawl in there, if she had her way, and tell them I made the whole story up just to protect her. And you know, I momentarily considered it, and I'm glad I didn't. She did do those things, and she was afraid of what kind of criminal record she might get after this was heard in court. So the charges she had, the county versus her, I won't say her name, her full name, but right here it says assaulting a child, level 3 domestic violence, and domestic violence assault in the 4th degree. The assault in the 4th degree, I forget if it goes 1 through 5 or 5 through 1. One of those was a felony, one of those was a gross misdemeanor, and she was deathly afraid of the felony, and she tried to persuade me to basically lie to the court and say nothing happened. And regarding these charges, I was brought into the prosecuting attorney's office, the lead guy, not one of his lackeys. And he was really kind of, I won't swear, but he was stern and terse and overbearing. And he really wanted to make the point to me that he's not going to pursue this if I want to back out in the end. If when the time comes, I'm going to wimp out, I guess, and ask them not to press charges or recant my story. I assured him that I was going to move forward, and so we did. And I had a few interactions with the prosecuting attorney's office before she went to the hearing, which she delayed 4 times. And somehow, through the magic of the court system and the extreme magic of her gender, she transformed assault to a child in the 3rd degree and 4th degree assault, domestic violence, two of those counts, got transformed into disorderly conduct, a misdemeanor of which she was sentenced to 1 year probation. You know this. If those charges were against me, I would be in jail right now with a record that would not go away for the rest of my life. I would probably be precluded from seeing my child ever, or if I could see him, supervised visitation, and extremely restricted time frames. Her gender alone got her off that. All right, enough about that. The last thing that I want to talk about is one of the clerks at the prosecuting attorney's office approached me and asked me to fill out a domestic violence impact statement form that the judge would read before, I guess, sentencing her. And what I find is I was very verbose on this. I'm going to take some excerpts. It's 5 pages long, but I'm not going to read all 5 pages. I started out with the statement, I'm a victim of a crime committed by the defendant and desire that at sentencing the court take the following into account. Gender bias and domestic violence. I am genuinely surprised and sadly dismayed to report that on every occasion I spoke with somebody about my marriage and domestic violence, it was unilaterally accepted that I was the aggressor. Really, no matter who I talked to, besides family and my closest friend. It shocked me. It perplexed me. My own attorney even assumed I was the aggressor, not reading paperwork. My attorney's secretary, my visit with the CPS as they investigated this, just naturally assumed I was the aggressor. My interactions with the county administrative personnel, my time in front of the judge in the beginning before he read the paperwork. My initial report at the Skagit County Sheriff's Office. Without fail, the initial response was thinking that I was the aggressor, and that was not the case. I said this is a deeply rooted, culturally accepted social bias against men. I wanted to set the precedent. They fully know that, but I had to say it. The next heading is my perception of how the crime was committed. And this is what I wrote. Shannon willfully and intentionally inflicted physical harm upon me with malice in an attempt to show me how she was angry. This is not the first time, and I wish I would have reported this behavior sooner. I did not even realize it was domestic violence or abuse at the time. I had accepted that it was just how Shannon is. And now I feel shock and dismay after reading the domestic violence pamphlets. I was completely insulated from the possibility that what I was experiencing could even be interpreted as domestic violence. All I wanted to do was document one incident to begin a chronology of assault against me, because it had happened many times. Knowing that this was a recurring pattern, I sought to begin an official documentation of the incidents. I didn't realize how deeply wounded I was. The emotional scars were deep, and I was surprised and embarrassed at how quickly and easily I cried when recounting the events to Deputy Tolosi. But he was very professional about it. I appreciate that. And the impact it's had on me and my family. And I tried to be eloquent in this. And of course, I was extremely emotionally charged when I wrote it. But we'll go over the highlights. For the rest of my life, I am relegated to being only a part-time father when I have done nothing wrong. I will forever be separated from Austin because we are now in the process of divorce, and somehow she is awarded custody of my son the majority of the time. How is it that she assaults me, injures me with violent intent and action, inadvertently draws blood from my son and injures him on his 2nd birthday, which will stay with me for the rest of my life? That image will never go away. And yet she is rewarded with primary custody. I am an emotional man, more so than the average man will admit, and this is distressing on multiple levels. I have requested and received a copy of the arrest report. The deputy who interviewed me also made the arrest. Shannon admitted that she meant to assault me, but my son Austin was injured accidentally. But who knows where that could have gone in the future? What if she threw a knife next time? Anyway. She admitted this, a direct admission, and yet she still has my son as primary custodial parent the majority of the time. She did inflict bodily injury upon me by digging her fingernails into my arm, which was documented by Deputy Tolosi. Shannon did inflict injury to Austin in the form of 2 cuts on the bridge of his nose on his 2nd birthday. By her thoughtless action of throwing the remote control at my head when I wasn't looking, but what I did was witness it miss, bounce off the couch, and strike him between the eyes. Again, and it is embarrassing, but as embarrassing as it is, the report goes on to document how I burst into tears and cried rather quickly while speaking with Deputy Tolosi when I recounted the incident. I was at my wit's end with nowhere to turn. So what is my reward for reporting the crime? My son is removed from my life 5 days a week. I could have just as easily not reported this, as I chose to on many previous occasions. If I had never reported the incident, I would at least still be able to see my son every day. I have been robbed of his daily presence. I no longer see him sleeping peacefully in his bed before I leave for work. I no longer have the opportunity to gently caress his forehead and whisper "I love you" before I go to work. I can no longer savor the few moments I used to have just to look at him laying in his crib before I left. Bringing that image to me every day at work. He will never have a typical Christmas with family or Thanksgiving or a family vacation. It is now separate, apart, and exclusive to one parent or the other. And the catalyst for this was simply reporting the truth. I almost wish I could take it back. I cry for what my son will never have and realize that he will not have a frame of reference to contrast it against. He will not know what he is missing, but I will. I no longer see him when I return home from work. I no longer have the luxury of seeing his beautiful little face light up. And smile when he sees me. I'm sorry. I can no longer see his face light up when I walk in the door. He no longer runs to hug me every day. No longer can I see his normal growing and learning on a daily basis. No longer can I marvel at his perceptions, his mannerisms, and personality on a daily basis. No longer can I personally influence him in obvious and subtle ways as a full-time father can. I can no longer play with him outside when I return, nor can I sit on the floor with him as he chooses a book for me to read or sits in my lap pointing to pictures asking me what's that. It may not seem like much to an outsider or a non-parent, but these small inane things are everything to me. We all only have one single childhood in which the memories that shape our lives are forged forever. I want to be there for him. I miss him every day. I cry every day at the loss of his presence. I love him and need to be involved in his life. I refuse to be a weekend father. I did nothing wrong. I refuse to be punished for the crime of being responsible. I have been assaulted by Shanna on many occasions, demeaned by her, reduced to nothing as my efforts to please are always rewarded with contempt. I had invested much time and effort into pleasing her so that our home life could be normal, but it was never enough. In her eyes, I was always lacking in some respect or another. My pursuit of a normal life, a 2-parent home for Austin, has been ultimately terminated by her action. It distresses me that she lays direct blame upon me for her arrest. She claims it is my fault and that I caused it to happen. And this really scares me, this next statement, because of the truth of it. She is not even self-aware enough to realize that she did indeed commit domestic violence upon me. In her eyes, my act of reporting the offense has become the contentious action, not the assault itself. I'll end it there. There's 2 more pages. I spent a significant amount of time writing this from my heart with the expectation that the court would see it, would somehow empathize and sympathize with my pain, with my loss of my son, with his injury, and with the evidence, the police report that she committed the domestic violence, the prosecuting attorney grilling me, making sure that I wasn't going to back out of prosecuting her, the photographic evidence that the deputies took. I really believed it was slanted in my favor, but the gender bias prevailed. Okay, so that's it. No more talk of domestic violence. We'll talk about Austin and my divorce from now on. Thank you so much for watching.